All right, so we have our login action and we have our user login reducer. So now I'm just going to collapse some of this stuff. Inside screens now I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to call this login screen.js. And let's generate a component here, and there's some stuff that we're going to want to bring in. So this will be a form, and when we have a form, usually our form fields are going to be part of the component state, so we do need useState. We also want useEffect. And let's bring in link from React Router. We're going to need some stuff from Bootstrap, so let's bring in form, let's bring in button, a row, and a column. And we're going to bring in useDispatch and useSelector so we can deal with our Redux state. Oops, what am I doing? React Redux. Okay, and we're going to bring in our message component. That's going to be from /component/message. We're going to bring in our loader as well. And we want to bring in our login action that we created in the last video. I keep doing common JS modules. All right, so login. It's going to be from actions, user actions. Now we're going to need to set some component level state here. So basically for our fields, and we're going to have just email and password. So let's set email, and the function to manipulate that piece of state will be set email. We want to set that to useState and just an empty string as a default. We also want password and set password. And let's just start to create our form. So down here in the return, I actually want to create a form container component because a lot of our forms are going to have some of the same styles. So let's go into components and create a new file here called form container.js. And this is going to be really simple. So let's generate a component, and we're going to bring in from React Bootstrap a container and a row and a call. And then down here in the form container, this wrapper element is going to be a container. And inside here, let's put a row, and I'm going to give this a class name of justify content MD, so medium screens center. And inside here we'll have a call, and let's say on extra small we want it to be take up all 12 columns. On medium we want it to be 6. And in here we're going to put in the props of children. And up here we want to take in props. We're going to destructure children, and that's it. So our form container, all the form that we create it's going to go in here as the child of our children. So back in our login screen, let's bring in form container. And we're going to use that as the wrapping element here instead of this div. Okay, so we have our form container. Now let's put an h1 in here. We'll say sign in. Now we want to check for an error. So I guess, yeah, let's actually bring our user info in. So we have our useDispatch. So let's create. Actually, you know what? Let's just create the form first, and then we'll do that stuff after. So let's just add our form. And this is going to have an onSubmit. And let's set that to submit handler. All right, and then we're going to have our email, which is going to be a form.group. And this form group, I'm going to give a control ID, and we'll set that to email. And then inside here, we want a form label. And this form label is going to be email address. Okay, under that, we're going to have our form control. And this form control is going to have a bunch of attributes. So the type is going to be text. Actually, let's make the type email. And then we want to add a placeholder. And we'll just say enter email for the placeholder. Then we want the value. The value is going to be the email from the state. And then we need an onChange. So for the onChange, we'll set an arrow function and then set email to e.target.value, so whatever we type in. Okay, so that's our form control. Let's save that, format it, and then the password is going to be very similar, so I'm going to grab this form group and paste that in and change that, and that to password, although we want this one and this down here, set password. This should be uppercase P. And the rest should be good. Now we want our button. So under the form group here, let's put a button and let's add a type of submit. And let's give this button a variant of primary. And we'll just say sign in. Now underneath the form, we're going to want a link to go to the register page. So let's go, we're still within the form container, but under the form here, I'm going to add a row, and let's give this a class name of py3 to add some padding. And then in here we'll have a call, and we're going to say new customer question mark. And then after that, we're going to have a link. And this is going to say register in here. Now as far as where we want this link to go, let's put a 2 in here, and we might have a redirect value. So if we do have a redirect, then this is going to go to, let's put some backticks and say /register, and then redirect is going to equal whatever that redirect variable is. Else then it's going to just go to /register. All right, now I want to get this, I want to create a route for this so we can actually just see the form. So let's go to our app.js file and let's copy, I actually want the home screen. We're going to put that at the bottom here. And we'll just copy one of these, go up here. So this is going to be /login. And we want this to load the login screen. So I'm going to go up here and copy that down. Let's bring in login. Okay, we'll save that, and we're just getting here submit handler is not defined, also redirect is not defined. So as far as the redirect goes, let's define that right here. So we're going to say const redirect, and we just want to check that location.search because that's going to have the URL query string. So if that exists, then let's take location.search and let's split, which is going to turn it into an array. We're going to split it by the equals. We want the one index, which will be to the right of the equal sign, or it's just going to be /. Okay, just so we have the option to add some kind of redirect. And then underneath that, we'll create our submit handler. And it's a form, so we're going to pass in e and then call e.prevent default so the page doesn't actually refresh. And then this is where I'm just going to put a comment. This is where we want to dispatch login. Expected use of location. Oh, I didn't take location out of the props. Okay, and then the rest of these are just variables that we have defined that we haven't used yet, so nothing to worry about. So let's see if we can see the screen. If we go and we click on sign in, you should see something like this. So we should have enough time to implement the login. We have everything set. We have the action, we have the reducer that's going to send down the user info state. So back in our login screen, let's define dispatch. So set dispatch to use dispatch, and then let's go right under that, and we want to get from our state the user login part of our state. So we want to do use selector, and that takes in state with an arrow function, and we want from our state user login. And then what we want to take from user login, so we're going to destructure from that, we want loading, error, and user info. And that's coming from user login that we just defined right here. So loading, error, user info, and if you remember when we look in our user reducer, we have the loading value, the user info, which gets passed in after we dispatch our action, and also an error if something goes wrong. So the next thing that we'll do here, let's see. So I want to redirect if we're already logged in. I don't want to be able to come to the login screen if we're already logged in. So let's add a use effect. I'll go right above the submit handler, and let's set our use effect here with an arrow function. And I'm just going to check for user info. So if user info exists, because it's going to be null if we're not logged in. So if user info exists, then let's take our props.history and let's call push, oops, not push state, just push, and we want to go to whatever is in redirect. And then let's pass in as our dependencies here. So I'm going to pass in dispatch since we're using that. Actually, no, we're not using dispatch in here. Let's pass in history and also user info, because if that changes, we want to redirect. And let's also add in redirect since we're using that in here. All right, so for the submit handler, this is where we actually want to call the or dispatch the login action. So I already brought that in right here. It's coming from user actions. So let's pass in, let's say dispatch and login, and we want to pass in our email and password from the form. Now we also have the loading and possible error. So once we submit this and the state comes down, we want to check for loading and error. So I'm going to go right under the H1, and let's say if there's an error, then let's show a message with a variant of danger, and in here we're going to put the error. Okay, then we also want to check for loading. So if loading, then let's show our loader. All right, let's check this out. So unexpected use of history, I think I forgot to pass it in as a prop. Yeah, so right here, history. All right, so I think we're ready to try this out. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to try to, so invalid email or password. So it did call user login request, but we got back user login fail because obviously it's an invalid email or password. So this message here is coming from our back end. In fact, if we look at our network tab and we look at this right here and look at the response, you can see it. We get our message and we also get our stack trace because we're running it in development mode. and it's a 401 unauthorized. So that's exactly what it should be doing. So if I try to log in with, let's say, john@example.com, so we're just now mimicking what we were doing in Postman. If I put the wrong password in here, invalid email or password. Let's put the correct password, and we're now signed in. So we should now have in local storage, if we go to application, we should have user info, as you can see here, and this has, we can see it better down here. It has the email, the if we're admin or not, our name, and it has our token, which is really important because we want to use that to access protected routes. And that has in it, embedded in it as a payload, it has our user ID in it. All right, so let's go back to Redux, and you can see in our state, user login, our user info is full with our data, and even if I reload, it should still be there. So if I go back to state user login, it's still there because we're loading it from our local storage. So what I'd like to do in the next video is have some sign that we're logged in, because right now the page looks the exact same. And what I want to do is get rid of this sign in. We don't want that there. In fact, if I click on it, it just redirects us back here. So I want to actually make this have our name, so it'll show our name, and eventually we're going to have a drop down that we can edit our profile. So we'll have a profile link. We'll also have a log out link that'll clear our state, clear our user out of the state, and of course out of local storage. So we'll continue on that in the next video.